Hey folks, MasakoX here. It's been a while since the superhero movie was released, and we feel that the time is right now to discuss something about it in greater detail. Even though it didn't make as much money as the Broly movie did, it could have an even bigger impact than it. And what do I mean by that? Many years ago, back in the days of the Buu Saga, Toriyama backed down on something bold, on giving Gohan the position of the main character for good. And while there are a lot of misconceptions as to why he did that, the most reasonable answer seems to be the fact that he tried and failed to come up with something compelling for him, and a lot of fans think that it is too late to fix that, but is it really? After all, Toriyama has made bold decisions before, so why did he fail here? Let's discuss. To put things in perspective here, it's kind of unfair for Piccolo to tell Gohan that he is the protagonist of the movie Superhero, where actually, in fact, he is the deuteragonist. That means the second most important character, whereas Piccolo is the protagonist of Superhero. Yes, his transformation and getting his fighting spirit back is kind of the backbone of the movie, but the main player here, the one that drives the story, is Piccolo, wholesale. Without the Namekian, without Big Green, the Red Ribbon Army might have actually pulled off their plans much more smoothly than they actually did. Still though, Gohan being the deuteragonist still makes him pretty relevant to the plot, without a doubt. Let's remind ourselves of this Toriyama quote from Dragon Ball Daizenshu 2 Story Guide, a translation courtesy of Kanzenshu, as always. And then the Cell arc ended. Did you think that everyone felt that you would put Gohan into the leading role? I intended to put Gohan into the leading role. It didn't work out. I felt that compared to Goku, he was ultimately not suited for the part. Nice and simple, right? This quote going against some of the rumors that fans hated Gohan. Untrue. Or Toriyama never intended to give the character the principal part in the first place, toying with his fans' emotions, which he does sort of do, but again, that is not true in this case. While Gohan did have some ups and downs in Super, he was almost always assisting people, with his bigger roles being reserved for the Tournament of Power, particularly in the manga since Toriyama is a fan of Gohan, and of course in the Moro Saga. Nevertheless, there seemed to be a certain power gap between himself, Goku and Vegeta, and you guys know full well, just like us, that power gaps in Dragon Ball are everything in terms of keeping characters away from being prominent. Can't keep up with Goku and Vegeta? Well then you don't have much hope in taking over from them in the future. Now let's fast forward to 2022, when, after the movie, said power gap is supposedly gone. It's been effectively nullified. Wow. Gohan said so himself, that he didn't know if Goku and Vegeta could have done a better job against Cell Max than they did. So, what about now? Is Gohan now a good enough main protag? Can Toriyama realize what he tried to do back in the Buu Saga with more material to go with, when there are a lot more hands on deck too, in which to help him make the transition from Goku to Gohan? It's not just him and his editors anymore. Toyotaro and all the anime staff are there with him, both for the TV and movie series. They can help him. What can we do with this character? But wait, is it really even a good idea anymore? And if not Gohan, then who? I know, we're throwing a lot of questions in your direction, but the point of this discussion is for us to try and figure out why Gohan didn't work for Toriyama back in 1994. Was he really not good enough, or was there actually something else involved? It will be, of course, the most speculative part of this video, as we've never been given a clear answer from the man himself. But thanks to some quotes from the same interview that we gave earlier, we can see what his process of early Goku writing was like, to better understand where the character is now. And then the Tenkaichi Budokai began, but why did you do that sort of a development? Up until the Tenkaichi Budokai began, the series hadn't been all that popular. That's what Torishima-san had told me. Your protagonist is rather plain, that's why it's not popular, he said. Personally, since I was doing a fighting story for the series, I had intentionally made the protagonist's clothing excessively plain. So this annoyed me, but then I figured it out. Well, let's increase its popularity, I thought. When I had designed Goku's character, the words that best represented him were, "I want to become strong." So I thought I'd bring that to the front. Even during Dr. Slump, the tournament-like events such as the Penguin Village Grand Prix or the mini event had been amazingly popular. So I'd simply make the story into a tournament format. From there, the Tenkaichi Budokai was born. I temporarily withdrew the other characters besides Goku, brought back Kami Senin, Master Roshi, and added Kuririn, Krillin, as a new character. From there, it got popular before I knew it. Still, unlike regular protagonists, Goku certainly didn't win the championship. Yep, it took him until his third try to finally win. Everyone around me was saying I'm sure Goku would win in the end. Even though I had wanted him to win, but since I'm perverse, when they said to me, I went, like I'd let him win. Yeah, I know it's a long one, but it's quite interesting. This is not a surprise for you folks also. You know as well as us that Goku's core drive, his mantra, is, I want to get stronger and fight strong guys, okay? What's Gohan's mantra? I want to become a good scholar and protect my family. Can you see the difference here? It's quite stark. The problem here is that Goku's mantra worked surprisingly well in terms of the transition from Dragon Ball to Dragon Ball Z. Before then, Goku was traveling and looking for Dragon Balls, and then later on finding strong guys and opportunities to fight. And then later in Z, with the exception of the Namek Saga of course, those opportunities started to come to him, which shortened the whole process. He didn't have to lift a finger because trouble sought him out instead of Goku going out looking for trouble. Being a hero is a thing that kind of just happened to him. He wasn't a natural born hero. It was just a side effect of him challenging even stronger beings. And this is something I really need to stress here. Goku and his friends never go and seek the villain these days, save for those few times where they were specifically asked by higher beings to do so. They are reactionary heroes. Because if you think about it, only two villains, Majin Buu and Moro, are really the only villains not directly tied to the main cast in any way. In the whole history of the sagas, not counting the movie ones of course. Now we can see some remnants of the fact that Gohan's approach to all of this would have been quite different, as his great Saiyaman moments have sort of shown us that his initial intention was to actively follow that path of his life. Something that maybe felt too generic for Toriyama, who is better known for subverting expectations in the long term. It's kinda hard to say, but it's interesting that the villain he threw at us after Cell was Majin Buu, whose presence was completely unrelated to Gohan in any way. And even though Gohan tried to be more active in that arc, you can sort of imagine that some of the stories here would have required Toriyama to throw villains directly at his loved ones to get any sort of a reaction. Heck, Toriyama did that with Videl and the Buu arc, and look what he did. The moment that Videl was in danger, her life was in peril, Gohan reacted. Point proven. And we can all remember how gruesome that was to see. The whole Pan thing in Superhero was a subversion of this, as it was a ploy to motivate Gohan to do anything. Need I remind you, Pan was in no way ever in danger, and I loved that. You see, this is one of the better examples in Toriyama subverting expectations. There's no damsel in distress here. Piccolo and Pan were in cahoots. But what about the post-movie times? Well, the power scaling, it's frankly ridiculous. It's also interesting to wonder whether the Red Ribbon Army even knew that they were able to develop technology that was able to go toe-to-toe with godly beings, deities. I know there isn't much to go on in terms of scale as a whole, but Gamma 1 and Gamma 2, and especially Cell Max, they would have been able to effortlessly destroy the Supreme Kai, Shin. Probably even entertain Beerus for quite a while too. So that would mean you would need to put Earth in constant danger in order for Gohan to do anything. He would be yet another instance of Dragon Ball copying Superman, this time most likely upping the Clark Kent part of the character because Gohan wears glasses. And while Dragon Ball can and will get serious in its story, it never goes too serious. Gohan is pretty serious about battles, and while it's fine in certain enclosed storylines, this might rob Dragon Ball of some of its unique quirks, maybe? But at the same time, its current model, the Goku and Vegeta show, it's starting to grow old. And even if the Triple Ts are starting to see this for themselves, they are starting to do something about it, limiting Goku and Vegeta's appearance in the superhero 2-hour movie to 10 minutes. People in the West still love the movie anyway, so they know that this can work, so why not do the same for Goten and Trunks then? We like to think that it's too late for them, due to the fact that both of them are no longer children, as Goku was. Same thing with Gohan, really. He is an adult with his family. See how despite that not many people comparatively see Dragon Ball? We as a fandom are still defined by the image of Kid Goku. It's really interesting to see. But Goku's time in Z started with him getting killed, as a family man, with a wife and child. And the main difference between Gohan, Goten and Trunks and Goku in his childhood is the fact that, they remained stationary. The three didn't develop all that much. Goku traveled a lot by comparison. Whilst once again, we are running around in circles and returning to that original interview, it is for a good reason. We all know how GT turned out and what elements people liked most from that series. Most of you would say that anything related to Super Saiyan 4 is your go-to, and not the Grand Tour itself. But time and time again, we can tell that Toei gave up on the traveling part of that series way too quickly, around about episode 3 according to sources. And the reason GT failed in the early stages is not due to the traveling premise itself actually. It's not why Dragon Ball wasn't so popular in its first arc either. The problem was that until the Tenkaichi Budokai, Goku was bland, yet everyone else seemed more compelling. That's no good if your main protag is boring, unless of course you're playing Persona, which is part of the bread and butter. For Dragon Ball's first arc, you get a cast of wacky and colourful characters and a world that wasn't just a series of plateaus like it sometimes feels in Z. So, if you don't want Gohan to move around a lot, understandable since he's a family man now, why don't you just send Goten and Trunks out on some journeys? But in reality, we ask this question not because we want to replace Goku or Vegeta, though it would be kind of incredible if one day the Triple T had the guts to actually try and retire them, but just get on with the approach that worked really well in the Moro Saga and early Dragon Ball, to make characters share the saga. Because in the end, the Saiyans, Piccolo, and the humans, they can all have their own parts written for them. You might think that this whole discussion was blown out of proportion in order to prove something really obvious. But the point is that none of the above approaches that we've talked about toward the protagonist are inherently good or bad. But you need, whatever you choose, to commit to it. Superheroes showed us that if you can commit to a character, like with Piccolo, who seemingly had his stuff sorted out years ago, he can be a very fascinating protagonist, with Gohan and Pan as his foils. Same thing with Broly, with Chilai and Lemo. Who would have thought that would have worked 5 years ago? Look how both these movies are structured. They are not about Goku. And still, both of these films are really cherished. You see, our biggest criticism about the latest manga saga, the Granola one, is that it stopped being about Granola, and it became about Goku. Goku and Vegeta can work as supporting characters for others, or even cameos, but just have faith in the characters that you started off with. The power gap we mentioned before is illusionary. If you want to fill it or make it less relevant, you can do it. Writers have the power to do that. And though we know that Toriyama himself struggled with Gohan being the main character, as he had the right to be, now with many more hands on deck, there's no reason to not follow different characters now. There are plenty of ideas to be had, especially since they've kind of been stealthily doing that already in the movies. So, you know, there are options out there. Different options for different stories. And since Dragon Ball has started to experiment with different stories, who knows? Maybe Goten and Trunks will get their turn next. Or maybe everything will return to a status quo and nothing ever happened. I'll see you anyway in the next video. Catch you later!